All right, so tonight's topic, emotional regulation and coping strategies. Hi, my name is Jamie, and I used to be an addiction counselor. I'll give you a little bit of background about me. We're going to go through a couple disclaimers, and then we will get started. If you think that you might know somebody who's interested in talking about mental health topics or wants to hear what I might have to say tonight, please give this share a few taps, a few likes, a few shares. Anything helps, okay? Gifts gifts are never expected but always appreciated. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, my name is Jamie. I have been in stimulant recovery for almost 20 years. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in Christian counseling of substance abuse and addictive disorders. Not a practicing Christian, but it was something at the time that I was very interested in. That's how I got that. I completed my internship for my licensure in the state of Arizona at Arizona State Prison, and I did that for about a little over a year. After that, I went on to work with kids that had DCFS involvement or CPS, depending on what state you're in, and worked with a lot of families. Not all of them, but a lot of the families were DCS or CPS involved. And then after that, I worked in a group home with dually diagnosed adults that had addiction and mental health issues at the same time. During that time period, thank you so much for the heart me, I began caring for my grandmother who had developed dementia. This was during the pandemic and sort of had a midlife crisis because I had a lot going on, decided I wanted to write full time. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to skip a whole bunch of stuff. And here I am. I am on TikTok. I'm still extremely passionate about mental health and addiction issues. I am no longer licensed. So with that being said, it's very important that everyone here understands if you find yourself in crisis and you're in the US or Canada, you can dial 988. If you are outside of the US or Canada, you can go to findahelpline.org. I do not hold a license, so everything we discuss here today is just opinion and open conversation. None of it is to be taken as advice or substituted for therapy. Now that we got that out of the way, we are going to talk about emotional regulation. So first thing I'm going to ask y'all to do is if you're new to the room, if you are new to the room, blue hearts in the chat. If you are new to the room, blue hearts in the chat. If you are not new to the room, please put some yellow hearts in the chat. If you are not new to the room, yellow hearts in the chat. Let me know who's here. All right, that sounds great. All right, yellow hearts in the chat. Welcome in. Blue hearts in the chat. Welcome in, Justine. Thank you so much for approving that for me. Emotional regulation is something that we all deal with. And I love how this filter is all jacked up. So I'm like headless right now. This is perfect. Emotional regulation is something that we all deal with, right? We see that toddlers don't have any emotional regulation, right? Because toddlers will see a toy 2 feet away from them and beat on the floor because they can't reach it, not, and they're mad because you won't just give it to them. You're making them low crawl to it, right? That is emotional dysregulation. Of course, that's something that, depending on how you're raised, that's how that's developed. How you learn to manage your emotions is how that's developed. Part of that is the whole nature versus nurture debate. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole tonight, but that's just the simplest example that I can give you. Emotional regulation is not about being positive all the time. I don't know about you, but I get tired of hearing people say, be positive all the time. Like nobody wants that shit shoved down their throat, right? If you're having a bad day, you want to be able to say you're having a bad day. That doesn't mean you have to stay in that mindset. And that doesn't mean you're negative Nancy. It means that day sucked ass and you are calling it what it is. So emotional regulation is about staying present with your feelings but not letting them control your behavior. So it's okay. So let's just say, for example, and this is real life, okay? Yesterday, I was on like this emotional roller coaster of a day. I had good news, then I had bad news, then I had good news, then I had people irritating the shit out of me all day long. Then I had good news, and then I had bad news, and then I was just pissy, and then I got on TikTok, and it irritated me, and I was like, okay, fine. I went through about 18 different emotions, and finally just said, I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. So I'm acknowledging that the entire day wasn't shot, right? I'm still 6 feet above the dirt. That's the positive. But I'm also acknowledging that I was completely emotionally bankrupt for the day because it was just all over the place. That is staying present in the feelings without letting them control my behavior, right? I could have started snapping at my daughter or snapping at my husband or yelling at my dogs because they were pissing me off yesterday. But I didn't. I acknowledge I'm irritated. I'm grouchy. It is what it is. We're going to call a spade and we're going to move on. Okay. So every emotion, anger, sadness, and fear can carry information. Instead of judging your emotions, get curious about what they're trying to tell you. Okay. So if you start feeling angry or anxious and you don't know why, you gotta stop. Don't mind my dog. This is like the time of day where he does the wolf howl. He thinks it's a full moon and shit. But if you have like fear or anxiety, and you can't put your finger on why, this is one of those moments. Ellie, please be quiet. This is one. She talked back. Stop. This is one of those moments where you want to stop and think, there's a reason I feel anxious. Is it fear? Is it frustration? And you don't want to be hard on yourself. Like, oh my God, I'm having such like a bad day. I'm such a terrible person because I don't want to be positive. It is okay to not be positive if you are not having a great day. But when you notice your emotional state shifting, that is your cue to pause, observe, and not react. So if I know I'm in a pissy mood, sometimes I do what I call preemptive warnings. Hey, everybody around the house who lives here, I am not in a good mood. If I seem snippy or snappy, it is not you. I am not angry with you. I am not upset with you. I'm just frustrated. I'm doing my best not to snippy snap at you, but just in case I do, please know that it is not personal. And a lot of times that helps make me more conscious of the fact that I am feeling that way, but it also makes them more conscious. And, because there's nothing worse in the world than having somebody be kind of snippy with you and then being like, did I do something? Right? So that's why I like to preemptively warn. But if you don't, it is still good to say, hey, I'm kind of moody. So yeah, no, I'm not really feeling it right now, but it ain't you. It's me. It's all me. Am I the problem? So when you feel overwhelmed, so this is a question for the chat. When you feel overwhelmed, what is your first instinct? Do you shut down, explode, or distract yourself? Shut down, explode, or distract yourself. And if anybody wants to come up and chat and answer, I will pull you up into the box. And Tina, if you want to answer, you can. It's up to you. Welcome in, Stink Pickle.
With it, I think it just really depends on my level of tiredness. That's where I get more snippy. And then my trigger is like dim lighting. Oh, you froze. Oh no.
Yeah. I think when we're tired too, we're more irritable at times.
You're frozen. Oh no.
And then I think also something, I'm sorry.
Uh-oh. I'm not, what do you want to do? You're frozen.
Oh no.
Oh,
You're
no.
frozen. Frozen. She's frozen. You know, to drop you down, put you back up. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Drop you down and just bring you right back up. Technical difficulties, guys. Just want to let me. Oh, what the world? It says I lost connection. So apparently the problem is me. All right. We'll bring her back up. There we go.
Join. Okay.
I think the problem was me. I got a thing that said I lost connection after all that.
Join us? Steph, do you want to come up here? I think she's unfrozen now.
Yeah, anybody that wants to come up and talk, I'm going to send out some invites to the ones that we know aren't going to bomb the chat.
Yes. Oh.
So the question was, before we got all frozen and my internet did whatever it wanted to, when you feel overwhelmed, what is your first instinct? Shut down, explode, or distract yourself?
Oh, so mine's more of explode, especially like the dim lighting if I'm tired. that triggers me. I'm like, okay, I need to get more bright lights and just to center myself.
How do you center yourself?
Either walking in a different room, turning on lights, trying to close the door from the little guy because he doesn't like to give space sometimes.
Yeah, kids love to latch on, right? Like my daughter will always need something in the moment where I'm like, I can't handle this right now. And it's like, I'm not gonna snap. I'm not gonna snap. And I think you bring up an important point too about being tired. I think sometimes too, if we've been holding on to something maybe all day that we haven't been able to release, and then we're tired, and then something happens that can make us a little more susceptible to like being snippy, snappy, or exploding.
Yes.
Steph, what are your thoughts?
Well, you're hitting on some very touchy points with me. I feel like I'm gonna cry. Okay, well, before well, honestly, I don't remember how I acted before my accident. When I became overwhelmed, I usually dealt with it. But since the accident, like if I start getting overwhelmed, I have to slow down or else I have a seizure.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so my hair. I'm going to use this as an example. I tried coloring it over the weekend.
Right.
And because I can't put my neck back into the sink by the chair for the beauty specialist, whatever you call them, and I missed some spots, and it looks like I highlighted my hair more than I dyed it. See, there's like some brown spots.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be there, and I about cried. I thought, but then I'm like, I only go to physical therapy, so, but it was hard to take because now I usually wear it up. I don't.
It could be the little things that like,
It's the little things.
it's the little things,
That's
I
the
think,
thing,
yeah.
is because before my accident, I think I took things evenly. I don't want to start slurring, but like I handled it well.
Right.
Little things after my accident, I still can't handle them, and that's why I have so many specialists.
Right. Well, and that kind of brings me to the next part of the topic, which is you have to think of emotions. Thank you so much, Justine. I appreciate that. You have to think of emotions like waves, right? How I said I was on a roller coaster. You could also use the ocean as a way to describe emotions, the emotional journey that we're on, because you have like Friday, I woke up and had a good day all day. Nothing could have got me down. I went to bed and got more good news at bedtime. Okay. So I was like on cloud nine that entire day. But then yesterday it was kind of like, how the tide comes in and then it goes out and then it goes in. That's kind of how yesterday was for me. You have the rise, the peak, the fall. And the key is learning to ride that wave without drowning in it. And I think sometimes it's really easy to find ourselves drowning if, like I said earlier, we're holding on to something all day and then we come home. And I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced this, but I've had like, when I still had a job didn't work for myself, I remember I was extremely frustrated with a certain issue that was going on at work. And somebody at work decided to pick that day to confront me. And I said, I don't want to have this conversation right now because it's not going to go well. And they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. And finally I was like, okay, so we're doing this today. And I lit into them and I felt horrible, but it was like, I tried to tell you, I need this boundary, and you disrespected my boundary by trying to force me to talk about it anyway. So now I'm looking like the crazy woman, and I think that that is one reason why it's important to recognize where you're at emotionally. And I think for the most part, a lot of us do this subconsciously because we've been doing it our entire lives, right? So welcome in, Key Baby. The amygdala, which is your brain's alarm system, the amygdala is your logic center. It's like the logic center of your brain. And that is, sometimes people call it like the lizard brain or the reptile brain because it's your fight, flight, or freeze. Or if you're me, the F off, fight, flight, freezer. I have the 4 Fs. And that's sometimes where your body will react physically faster than your brain can even process. So your brain is processing it, but your cognitive part of your brain is not processing it as fast as like the reptile part of your brain. And you might snap, or if you ever get so angry you just cry. That's why those things happen, because you can't even process, because it's just like the proverbial straw has broken in that moment. And you can actually retrain your brain to pause before reacting if you're aware of how to do that, or if you learn strategies. And we'll talk about some of those tonight. But next question is, have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and instantly wished you hadn't, and been like, oh my God, why did I just say that? Thank you so much for the heart, me.
Oh, yeah, a lot since my accident. But it doesn't matter to me because I'll forget it like, I don't know how much later. But when you were talking about parts of the brain, how come
Yes.
I have 2 neurologists? I've had 2 ever since my accident. It was a year and a half ago, and neither have ever brought that up.
I think it's one of those things that can just get missed. But, I think, and I think especially with like head conditions or head injuries, um, depending on where the injury was, that can also affect emotional regulation. I am not a doctor,
Yeah.
but I do think that because I was on the mental health side of things, we look more at why things happen. Doctors look more at how things happened, if that makes sense. And I think so on the mental health side, I think sometimes that's why things like that get missed. And in the chat, Dory said that she has also said something when she was angry. And I know I can 100% relate to that. I will say, though, that sometimes when I'm angry or irritated, I'm speaking my mind, and it may come across as hurtful, but it's the truth. Like, I try never to cuss anybody out, but sometimes in my moment of frustration, it'll be like, well, if you would just stop doing XYZ, maybe I wouldn't be so irritated. And maybe that's not the best way to come across, but I do think that sometimes frustration or anger, sometimes conflict can actually bring about the conversation you need. But it's about understanding, are we having a healthy conversation even if I sound frustrated? Or are we having an unhealthy conversation where either I'm feeling guilty or somebody is name calling and you're just getting nowhere? And I think thank you so much for the heart, me. So I think that's important to keep in mind too. I know I had a friend who said she always liked me when I was a little bit irritated because I was more assertive, because it's probably hard to believe, but in some ways I can be very passive, and not passive aggressive. Like, in some ways I can just be like, oh, that person's a wingnut. It is what it is, right? And just ignore them. But then sometimes it'll be like, no, I'm not putting up with this shit today. You caught me on the right day. So, hi, Kelly. Welcome in. If you want to come up, let me know, because we're going to do open panel. We'll
Okay,
see you in a
thank
little bit.
All right, thank you.
All right. So, basically, essentially what I was trying to do with that is emotional regulation is learned. It is something that we learn, whether it's environment, whether it's nature versus nurture, but it's like a muscle. And you know how when you go to the gym and you have to get a little bit of endurance, it's kind of the same thing when it comes to emotional regulation. That's why you'll see the terrible twos, right? But then eventually the toddler starts understanding how to regulate their own emotions based on how the parent reacts. So it's kind of like the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Welcome in, C. Dell. Coping strategies that you might use when you are struggling to maybe keep it together? Anybody?
Some of my coping skills would be doing diamond art, reading my Bible, praying.
Okay. Those are all good. I think creatives, especially for those of us who like to be creative, I think creative is one of the healthiest outlets you can have, especially because I would much rather somebody be doing diamond art than taking a bat to a car or something.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Justine said writing, so woohoo, writer in the house, writer in the
Justine,
house.
Justine's my daughter-in-law.
I love that. Welcome in. All right. So I think you gave some really great examples of coping strategies, and I think they're healthier. Now, I know some people's, like mine, is listen to music. Depending on how well I've eaten and how much I have to do, exercise is another outlet for me. And I should probably be more consistent with it because it's one of the healthiest outlets for you when you're, feeling emotional. But there's some people that like to do grounding techniques. So like earlier, Tina said, centering herself, right? I'm the kind of person where I can't meditate because, as you can see, probably throughout these lives, I have a hard time sitting still. But I like to set a timer for 30 seconds or a minute. Can I just sit still and like think about nothing but whatever's on my mind for that 30 seconds or that 1 minute? And then I try to increase incrementally up to 5 minutes, right? I think the longest I went was 10 minutes once. So woohoo, go me, right? But that's one way to center. Some people like to do breathing techniques. It's really just a matter of like what you like, what you think works for you. Coloring, diamond painting, the crafters in the room, crafting. Some people like to work, and that's like their coping mechanism. And that could be a double-edged sword depending on if you know how to balance or not. I know that when my kids were younger, sometimes going to work was my safe place because I just got tired of hearing mom, mom, mom. But I think like there's a certain point where you also have to be present with your family. So things like that you have to be very, very careful with. Deep breathing is another good coping strategy. And like sometimes we have that good cry and then we get all done and we're like, that's like our body being like, okay, now you can find your wusa, right? An unhealthy coping habit that you wish you could replace.
Worrying,
That's a hard one.
being very emotional. I have a very hard time controlling my emotions.
Yeah. I think in some ways we as women have a harder time because we're dependent on for a lot and we're not appreciated for a lot. And I don't say that as like I just think in general, like blanket statement, not like any one of us specifically. I would say mine is nail biting, but I'm getting better. They're not looking too bad. And then this, I'm struggling with this.
Oh, that thing. Okay.
Yeah, the flavored air is what I've been struggling with. So that's but I have cut back drastically. I don't know if you guys remember, like a couple weeks ago, I was really sick. So I can't hardly do it anymore now just to kind of get rid of the headache I do. So I'm doing better. I used to go off camera all the time. Now I don't have to do that. All right. So moving on, recognizing emotional triggers. First, oh my God, a goat head got me. Ugh. If you guys don't know what those are, they're these little like seeds of these stupid weeds here. And we've never had them before, but this year the dogs keep bringing them in on their paws. And yeah, it's horrible. And then we have one, he'll like limp along and it's like, give me your paw. Then he'll fight and it's like, I'm trying to help you. Emotional triggers. So a trigger is not a weakness. It is an opportunity to heal. It shows you where you're still hurt. So when you're feeling emotional about something, look at the situation and say, what about the situation is making me feel this way? Do I feel rejected? Do I feel like people don't care about me? What is it? And is it something you can overcome, or is it something you can communicate, or is it something you can ask for support for? And we all have different support networks. Like I know that all of us here, we all have our little circles with each other, but outside of each other too. And we probably all have a safe person. And if you don't have a safe person, oh my God, Jamie's going to help you find a safe person. Triggers are often connected to things we've experienced over the course of our lives. You know how like when you go somewhere and you smell something and it'll trigger a memory? It's kind of that same concept. Sometimes, even though we might be 20 years removed from an experience, a certain phrase, especially if you have like trauma or PTSD or just things like that, one phrase, one smell, one interaction can kind of trigger that response. And it goes back to that amygdala that we were talking about earlier. So it can trigger an emotion and we're having a hard time processing, like, why is this upsetting me, right? So like if I see an ambulance to this day and I see somebody being put on a bed, I still cry. My father passed away 23 years ago, almost 20, it'll be 23 years this year. 23 years ago, I was sitting with him when he passed away. So there's something about an ambulance that still triggers me, even though I never saw him go in the ambulance. And it's just one of those things that the back of your brain, your physical response hits you before the emotional response. And you don't have a way to control it, but if you can sit with it when you're obviously ready, not in the moment, but if you sit with that and you say, why did that trigger me? Like, what about that made me cry, made me angry, made me sad, depressed, whatever? A lot of times you can figure out, oh my God, I was triggered by that. Okay, well, I'm not a horrible person. It's okay, but we're past it now. I'm safe now, right? When another example would be like, and this is just an example, not me, okay? When I feel ignored, I tend to get defensive. And really, it's not because anybody did anything to me, and it's not because I'm actually rejected. It's because maybe I felt unseen when I was growing up. Maybe everybody in my family talked so much that there was no room for me to have a voice, and so I feel unheard. Maybe I was in a severely abusive relationship or severely abusive family, and the best thing I could do was keep my mouth shut so that nobody was paying attention to me. Those are things that can trigger stuff in us and bring up emotions. And even if you've done therapy and even if you've been working on healing over time, that doesn't mean that this shit's gonna go away. Like sometimes something is still going to bring that forward for us. And this next question is optional. I don't want anybody, like I said, to answer anything they're not comfortable with. But do you know what your biggest trigger is?
Mine right now is my son.
Okay. Mine is honestly when people have expectations from me that we never discussed. And what I mean by that is I have family that will oftentimes volunteer me for shit because I don't work. But it's like, but I do work. Like just because I don't go to a 9 to 5 does not mean that I work. So you just deciding that you should call me and tell me to do XYZ for so and so, I have a problem with people telling me what to do, like just in general. But if you call me with expectations of me to do something without asking me if I can do it, that's really where I struggle. And I feel like that's something, you know, we all have a theme, like certain themes come up recurring. Mine is people in my family, and I mean my actual blood family, have this expectation that just because they call me, I should be able to help fix the problem. And it's like, no, I can't fix everybody. Like, y'all have the same access to fucking Google that I do.
Right.
So I think that's probably one thing that triggers me a lot. And part of that, I think the reason it triggers me is because I have been a problem solver for my entire life. But I am at a place in my life where I pick and choose who I want to help solve problems for. So
Exactly.
I have my community here on TikTok. And there are people here in this community, I will not name anybody. There are people here in this community who know if they call me or they text me and they say, I'm having this issue or that issue, I will help them because I am choosing to help them, not because anybody expects it from me. And I think it's important that we recognize whatever our trigger is, that maybe if we don't have boundaries that we set them, and if we set them and people don't like them, then maybe those people aren't for us, if that makes sense.
No.
I'm all about protecting your peace. I'm really bad about sometimes not reading the room. And what I mean by that is sometimes I will realize I didn't like somebody, but then I'm like, I'm being way too hard on this person. That's not cool. And then I realize I was wrong and I should have just stuck with that instinct to begin with. And then it's like, oh my God, why didn't I just read the room? I could tell everybody else was being fucking weird about this person, but I was like Miss Optimist here, you know? So that's another kind of like trigger for me. So those are mine. There's my life story. There's my origin story. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways though, we can all relate to that. Like people, the same kind of problems seem to happen. Like you ever see somebody who's like, they struggle in relationships and like maybe they relationship hop, and I'm not judging. I don't care what people do in their personal life, but a lot of times they have the same issue coming up over and over and over in that relationship. And it's because there's a trigger there that they're not identifying. All right. So I found this really cool thing when I was doing research for the topic tonight, because I'm a procrastinator and I never pick the topic until the day of. But I'm going to dive into this more, I think, in the future. But it's called STOP, using the STOP method. And I've never heard of this method. And it is STOP. Stop what you're doing. Take a breath. Observe what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And then proceed wisely, but with intention. And I thought that is like literally I mean, it took me a lot of seconds to read that, but you could do that in 5 seconds, right? You're pissing me off. Okay. Taking a breath. You're pissing me off in my head, right? And then, okay, I don't think right now is the best time for us to talk about this because I need some space. Right? And of course, this is one of those things that, like, for me, this kind of shit is easy. It's not easy to everybody. So if you forget, I promise you it's not the end of the world. But if it's something that you just think about, even after the fact, that's still progress in my book. Another thing is label your emotions. Instead of, like, if you explode or you break down and cry, or even if you're having a great day, right? It's okay to say, I'm feeling euphoric. Like how I said Friday, I was feeling like I was on top of the world. That was euphoria because it was such a good day. And I have not had a good day like that in a very long time. And I think for people who maybe struggle with juggling loads, or like me, I literally am diagnosed with PTSD that like is disabling. I think sometimes those days we feel like they're never going to happen. So I was ecstatic that day. But I also think that when I hit my lows, they're a little bit more. So I try to say, I'm just feeling a little exhausted. I'm feeling a little tired. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Feeling overwhelmed to me is something that can put me in a depression, or it can make me get my ass in gear. It just depends on what side of the spectrum we're on that day with what's happening in my life. How many times does my phone ring? How many times does somebody give me good news or bad news? So you want to label your emotions as you feel them, especially if you're like, I'm really anxious, but I don't know why. Let's figure out what the trigger is. Now, are you really anxious or are you really stressed out because X, Y, Z is going to happen? Because I think we tend to, unfortunately, society has normalized terms that so much so that I think we're at a place now where we're mislabeling actual emotions. People aren't just saying, I was so angry. They're just like, I was mad. I was mad that my team lost the game. You weren't mad. You were just annoyed. You were just annoyed. It was a game. It wasn't that serious. Mad is more of a more serious emotion. And that's, again, just my opinion. Let's see. Build an emotional reset ritual. And I'll explain what this means. So my emotional reset ritual is something I have to do when I am what I call emotionally bankrupt. And I want to thank Over 21 for that term, because she loves to think of everything as currency. And so when she talks about emotions on her lives and she says emotionally bankrupt, I'm like, oh my God, that's like the best way to describe it, right? Because you put your emotions in. On Friday, I was flush. I was a millionaire. Yesterday, I was like negative 1,200. So I think the emotional reset for me is if I'm having a bad day, like I can't get out of bed and function that day, I say, okay, I'm taking today to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And if I have something I need to do, it's getting done from the bed. I will bed rot today. I will do my mandatory obligations, but I will sit here, I will pout, I will scream, I will fuss, I will bitch, I will moan, I will do all the things. But tomorrow when I wake up, it's a new my bank account is back at $10 and we're gonna just build on that, see if we can accrue some interest throughout the day. And I think that's the best way to sit with the emotion, but not dwell on it, because you can sit with the emotion, but if you sit with it for too long, you might end up in a worse place. And I think it's also really important that if you do something like that, that you're sharing it with somebody that you trust, right? So I'll tell my husband, I'm going to bed rot today, but tomorrow I have to get up and do something. So that tomorrow, if I don't feel like getting out of bed, he'll be like, well, you said you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. And then in my head, I'm like, you know what? He's right. And if I lay here and I let it pile up, that I'm going to be overwhelmed and more pissed off and more angry and blah, blah, blah. Right. So that's my emotional reset ritual. It does not have to be yours. Some people might have a much simpler ritual. Some people might light a candle. Some people might meditate. Some people might do yoga, exercise, diamond art, listen to music, crafting, take a drive. Like I used to have a motorcycle. When I had a motorcycle, sometimes it was really fun to just take, that was therapy, like fucking amazing therapy, by the way. But I'm too old to be riding a two-wheel bike. So, stretching, and you said praying earlier, Kelly, and I think that's important too. If you're spiritual, whatever your spirituality, religion, whatever, I think that can really play an important role in reset, right? That helps your body start feeling maybe safe again or bringing yourself back from wherever you were. Not mandatory. What's your go-to song, quote, or mantra that helps you reset? Or it could be a movie. Mine is Forrest Gump. If I need to cry, but I can't cry, because sometimes because I had to turn off emotions in the military and as a therapist, I can't turn them back on again. So if I put on Forrest Gump and the part where Jenny dies, floodwaters open, cry, get it all out. That's my reset movie.
My problem is I don't have problems with crying. I empathize with other people. I can cry at the drop of a hat. I can feel others' emotions, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I can, cry along with them. I'm bipolar, so I'll just put that out there. And I got major depressive disorder also. I went through a lot in my life.
So do you think you're empathetic and maybe sometimes you like I like to say absorb other people's emotions?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think with that being said, if you know you're more susceptible to absorbing emotions and we see somebody who's negative, we have to run, right? Because we
I
don't
run
want
the other
any part of that.
No, I don't. And I have a hard time with people respecting, not, disrespecting me,
Yeah.
because I think of others' feelings a lot. And I treat them with the utmost respect, but a lot of times, especially here on TT, you don't get that respect. You get
Right.
disrespected often, and I have a hard time with that.
Right. And I think there's people who literally have no fucking life, that they have time to come on TikTok and harass people straight up. And after something that happened in Brit's live, well, her friend's live this morning, like I realized there's literally people that just scroll from live to live to live to find somebody to torment. And you know what? I'm gonna say this to you, and I don't know if it'll help you, but it helped me a long, long time ago. When I was still in the service, I was more self-conscious about what people thought about me. And I don't know why, because some stuff I can let roll off my back, some stuff I can't. And this friend of mine said, do they pay your bills? No. Do they share your last name? No. Then stop letting them get to you. And I was like, I never thought about it like that. And then I started sort of saying, like, if the worst thing that ever happened to me was somebody called me a bitch, like I would have it made, right? but sometimes you're having a good day and you're just trucking along. Somebody comes in and wants to say something stupid, and it's like, man, I'm just minding my own business. There was a live a couple weeks ago. Yeah, there was a live a couple weeks ago, and Tina, I think you were actually in that live, and it was in one of the box battle rooms. And there was a couple of ladies that we know from our little circle, and they had all the filters on and they were like bopping to the music. And somebody came in and was like, they're too old to be dancing. And I'll tell you what, I was so happy to be a mod that day in that room because block, bitch, like block. They are enjoying their life. And you know, and it really goes to say that misery loves company, right? Because if I'm miserable, I'm going to bring everybody down around with me, right? But it also goes to say, if you surround yourself with good people and successful people and people who care about you, you're going to find that your mood is better as well. And you know how they say, like, you ever notice how like rich people all stick together, business people all stick together, successful people maybe not in that industry stick together? And it's because we become the people we surround ourselves with. So if we surround ourselves with people that we enjoy being around, it's really easy to identify when somebody doesn't fit into that space and you want nothing to do with them. So, and I think especially when you have bipolar, PTSD, trauma, or just life experience, my God, the world is traumatic right now. I think it's really important that we protect our peace. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because I have been up and down on a roller coaster the last couple of weeks. Like, I had to stop watching the news because I want to be informed, but then I'm like, oh my God, that's so horrible. I don't want to be informed.
Watch the news.
Yeah, and then it's like, but I should know what's going on because, you know what I mean? But it's like, you have to find balance. And I finally realized, like, I have to protect my peace. It's not that I don't care. The problem is I care so much and I can do nothing. And the helplessness that I feel over that is actually worse than not knowing. And I can do my part in little ways through charity or supporting causes. And sometimes that's all we can do and it sucks, right? So I'm gonna wrap up with a couple of cool things and then we can go into Q&A and chit chat, or we can end the live. I like to just go with the flow. So a couple things to go over. Healing doesn't mean you'll never get triggered. So if you've been through healing or you've been through therapy or whatever, I've been through therapy. I've been through 3 different therapy programs post-service, and I still have days where I don't feel healed. And that's okay. What matters is you recognize that you're still struggling with something, you're still healing. If you can recognize that you're still struggling with something, you are still healing. Every time you do get triggered or something sets you off and you're aware of it, it still means that you are healing. It also might mean that you're recovering faster every time because you're able to put a label on it, identify it, deal with it, and move on. You know, and I know like 20 years ago, something that would have been said to me really mean, I would have sat on for a week. Now, 5 minutes, I'm so busy, I forgot what the hell was just said to me half the time, right? Emotional regulation is not silencing your emotions. Emotional regulation is not just being stoic. It is understanding your emotions, putting a name to your emotions, understanding what triggered those emotions, and how you guide or learn to relearn how to healthily feel those emotions. The more you practice awareness, the more power you have over how you respond to things. And every emotional storm is going to pass. You're not broken. I just want to say it again. You are not broken. You are learning. You are learning. Any takeaways from what I've said tonight, or any thoughts on anything I've said?
You've hit the nail on the head quite a few times with me.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I hope it was helpful.